Hey everyone, it's Vicky. Welcome back to the channel. And today we are talking about this one big headache so many people have, which is how do I make sure in my presentations, in my meetings, I remember what I want to say, get to the point, and actually stop rambling. So this is a big problem, especially through Zoom where you're doing it through a camera. And even if you're fine in normal life, it's really easy to lose your train of thought in a Zoom meeting. So today we're talking about 3 types of thinking that you could do in order to make sure you get to the point and stop rambling. One of the reasons why we don't make the point, we ramble, is because the point itself is not very impactful. It's not short, it's not punchy, and that's why we even forget about them. We don't even want to talk about it. So in order to avoid that, we want to be able to think in comparisons. This is so undervalued that if you don't do anything else and just this, you will be able to stand out. Your presentation, your meetings will be different. It will leave an impact. Let me show you what I mean with an example. So I talk about the science of persuasion, and one of the things that's crucial is that you want to be able to appeal to emotions. You need to be able to communicate with emotions. Now, the things you have to do are you have to create the narrative around the customer. Everything is about them, right? It's not about me, but them, right? The other thing is that you want to be able to help them imagine, help them tell the story and visualize it in their minds. And that way, they will be able to feel the emotions as if they're going through the story. So even though I say these things and, it probably makes sense to you, but it's so abstract. So when you go and you write your website, you most likely are not going to remember that, oh, right, Vicky said this, right? So because it's very abstract. So one way we can change that is by using comparisons. So for example, I took this from a Canadian startup called, I think, ecobee, and they are a smart home device manufacturer. And so their tagline for their website is, your home as you imagine it. So it's a smart home device, helps you turn on the lights, run the dishwasher or whatever it is. And so, yeah, it makes sense, right? Your home as you imagine it. But if you want to inject some emotions into that, you probably want to say something like, your home as you've never imagined. Your home as you've never imagined. Now that gives you a different visualization in your mind, right? Now you're curious. What is possible, right? You start to feel these emotions of, I wonder what is possible. And that brings you into a story, and that primes you to continue reading on their website. And so by showing what I've just told you, which is make sure it's about the customer and make sure you help them imagine, then seeing the comparisons, you know the difference. So number 1 is really thinking about things in comparison. Make sure you compare contrast. That's the easiest way to learn because they highlight the important details. And that way you make your point. Right? That is the point. The point is not focusing on your customers, make sure that you help them imagine. The point is really the things that your customers will feel are very different. And instead of telling about it, you can show them through comparisons. Now, the second reason for why we ramble and we don't get to the point is that we lack direction. This is the source of most confusion in life. Which way do I go, right? Where do I go? Literally or figuratively? And that's why we want to be able to think in directions. Very basic math, right? We've all seen the quadrants of, this is good, this is bad, right? We've all seen these kind of very simple illustrations of direction, and that is how our brain is wired to receive information. So we want to be able to think in direction. Let's use another example. So Charlie Munger says the first rule of compounding, never interrupt it unnecessarily. If this is your point, and you can see how this can get very messy very quickly, right? If some of your audience don't know what compounding is, you might want to explain. right? What is compounding? But then you lose the interest of those who already know. Like how do you, or if everyone knows, how do you make sure that it's just not another cliche, people just say, yeah, I know, and people move on, right? So here we want to be able to think in direction of which direction are people going to go if they get the point, right? So demonstrating it, for example, that compounding looks something like this. Maybe more dramatic. Something like this. Right. So if we want to make the point of don't interrupt it unnecessarily, maybe we can draw something like, and then you interrupt it. Maybe you interrupt it here, and then you have to start over again. So in this sense, we see the direction of what happens if you interrupt compounding, right? And even for people who don't understand exactly what compounding means, they will be able to see that roughly this is the direction you're going to go and not something linear like that, right? So in order to get your point across and stop rambling, instead of explaining, so compounding is like this is the mathematical equation, and lose people on the way, and you have to ramble because you have to explain and people are looking at you like, what is this? You can try to show them in direction. And the other thing is I've actually just combined it with the first way to think in comparison, right? So if you put this side by side, you see that very obviously what you want is this and not this, right? So this is another way to make sure that in order to get your point across, that you don't want to ramble, just make sure you show people what it means to them, the direction this idea will be able to take you to. Now, the third way is think in visuals. We're getting a bit meta here. What I've just done just now are visuals, right, in 1 and 2. So we want to make sure that the problem of forgetting your point and then not getting to the point and rambling is because you don't have something to anchor your thoughts to. I've talked about, using a mind map in order to help you anchor these ideas. But another way, and that is a visual representation, but another way is to condense your points into visuals like we've just done. This way, your mind will be a lot better at retrieving the information you want to remember, instead of trying to remember a phrase, which is a lot more difficult. So for example, again, we're going to use an example of, let's say, a saying that I really like, which is, what we think, we become. And this is apparently attributed to Buddha. It doesn't matter. This is just an example. What we think, we become, right? If this is your point that you want to make, instead of trying to memorize this phrase, which, you might miss little words here or there or add little words here and there, another way is to make a visual for yourself, at least, if not to then show your audience, which makes the point. So the way that I think about it and the point I get from this sentence is, let's say this is you, right? And this is what you think. So as you think bigger, you become bigger. So for me, this is the visual that represents what I want to talk about, not only with this phrase, but also the idea behind it that I want to talk about. It, again, shows comparison, right? If you think small, then that's who you are. But as you think bigger, you become that, right? The other thing, of course, is direction, right? Again, instead of just moving in one area, you can expand. So in this way, we tie everything all together, which is using visuals to make sure that you have an anchor you can come back to and actually remember the points you want to make. And this is so much more effective than memorizing the sentence, because after you've memorized the sentence, you also need to retrieve, what do I want to talk about it? right? What point am I trying to make with the sentence? Whereas if you turn it into a visual, you not only remember or remind yourself what you want to talk about, but also just by showing the visual, your audience will be able to get that point a lot easier. Because again, humans, biologically, we are visual animals. This is how we learn. So instead of just auditorily hearing, what we think we become, give them something to latch their eyes onto. So with these 3 types of thinking in comparisons, thinking in directions, and thinking in visuals, you're going to be able to actually remember what you want to talk about, get your point across, and stop rambling. If you found this video helpful, make sure you give it a like and subscribe if you haven't already. It really helps the channel, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.